The wind howled outside like a wild beast, shaking the thin metal walls of Jack's small cabin. Rain hammered the roof so hard it sounded like the sky was breaking apart. Jack sat near the fire, holding a cup of hot tea, enjoying the warmth. After a long day working in the mines, nights like this, he preferred to be alone. Storms on this planet were dangerous, and no one in their right mind would travel during one. That was why the sound startled him. A sharp knock 3 times, followed by silence. Jack froze, thinking he had imagined it, but then it came again, louder this time. Whoever it was, they were desperate. He set his cup down and walked to the door, his boots heavy on the creaking floor. The wind pushed against the cabin, making the walls groan. He grabbed the handle, took a breath, and opened it. A rush of cold air hit him, and with it came the sight that made his heart tighten. A woman stood there, not human, but alien. Her skin was pale silver, glistening from the rain, her long dark hair plastered to her face. In her arms, wrapped in a worn blanket, was a small bundle she held tight against her chest. She was shivering badly, her lips trembling, her eyes wide with fear. "Please," she said, her voice almost lost in the roar of the storm, "save us." Jack stepped back, motioning her inside. She hesitated for half a second, then rushed in, clutching the bundle, like her life depended on it. Jack shut the door quickly, locking out the wind and rain. She stood near the fire, her shoulders hunched, water dripping onto the wooden floor. Jack's eyes moved to the bundle in her arms. "Is that a baby?" he asked. She looked at him, her breath uneven, and nodded. Slowly, she pulled back the corner of the blanket, revealing the face of a small alien child. Its skin was the same pale silver as hers, but duller, almost gray. The child's eyes were closed, and its breathing was faint. Jack felt a knot in his stomach. "He's sick," he said quietly. The woman's eyes filled with tears. My daughter. "She hasn't eaten in 2 days," she whispered. "The cold is killing her." Jack moved to stoke the fire, making the flame stronger. "Sit," he told her, pointing to the chair closest to the warmth. She sat down without protest, still holding the child. The little one didn't move, but Jack could see her small chest rise and fall. Barely as he fetched a kettle to heat more water, Jack asked, "Where's your home? Why are you out in a storm like this?" The woman's fingers tightened on the blanket. "I have no home," she said, her voice shaking. "It's not anymore." Jack waited, letting her speak in her own time. She stared into the fire, the orange light reflecting in her silver eyes. "My husband died in a mining accident 3 months ago," she began. "He was working for the same company that runs this colony. They said it was his fault. Refused to pay the death benefit." Her voice dropped, full of bitterness. "Then they came for me. They said I owed the company for the room we lived in, for the food we ate, for the air we breathed. When I couldn't pay, they threw me out. They took everything, even my clothes, except what I was wearing." Jack clenched his jaw. He had heard stories like this before. Out here, far from Earth, companies treated alien workers worse than machines. "I walked," she continued, "for days. I heard humans were different, kinder. I hoped someone would take pity, but every door I knocked on, they turned me away." Jack's hand paused on the kettle. "And why come here?" She looked straight at him then, her voice soft but steady. "Because this was the last light I saw before I collapsed." For a moment the cabin was silent, except for the crackle of the fire. Jack could feel the weight of her words. She had gambled her last strength on reaching him, a stranger. He brought her a cup of warm tea. "Drink," he said. "It will help." She took it with both hands, her fingers still trembling. "Thank you," she whispered, sipping slowly. Jack leaned against the wall, watching her. There was something in her eyes that went beyond hunger or cold. It was the look of someone who had nothing left to lose, but still carried a spark of hope. The child whimpered softly, and the woman hushed, her gently. "She, little star, you are safe now," she murmured in her own language, the words soft and melodic. Jack's mind raced. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story beyond the few pieces she had shared. But he felt the pull of something dangerous and powerful. The urge to protect her. He knew that whatever had chased her out into the storm was not going to stop just because she had found shelter. And if she was telling the truth about the company, then she had enemies with money, power, reach. As if reading his thoughts, she looked up. Her voice was quiet, but the words were heavy. "If they find me, they will take my daughter, and I will never see her again." The storm outside raged on, the walls rattling under its force, but Jack felt the real danger was already inside. His home. Not because of her, but because of what would follow. And somewhere deep inside, he knew opening that door tonight had changed everything. The firelight flickered against the cabin walls, throwing long shadows that seemed to dance in the storm's rhythm. The alien woman sat close to the flames, holding her daughter as if the child might vanish if she loosened her grip. Across from her, elbows resting on his knees, watching her carefully. The little girl's breathing was shallow, her skin still pale. Jack had seen miners collapse from exhaustion before, but this was different. This was the kind of weakness that came from hunger and cold over many days. He poured a small bowl of hot broth and set it on the table. "Try to feed her this," he said gently. The woman's silver eyes lifted to his, suspicious at first, but then softening. She took the bowl and carefully touched the spoon to her daughter's lips. The child stirred faintly, swallowing with effort. A hint of color returned to her cheeks, but Jack could tell she was still far from safe. "She needs rest," Jack said, "and food, and someone to look after her." The woman looked down at her child for a long moment before answering. "We've had none of those for weeks." Jack leaned back in his chair, feeling a tightness in his chest. "Said the company threw you out, but why would they go this far? Debt or no debt, it's rare they hunt someone this hard." Her jaw tightened. "It's not only about debt. My husband was a skilled worker, too skilled. He found something in the mines, something they didn't want anyone to know about." Jack's brow furrowed. "What did he find?" Her eyes darted to the door, then back to him, as if afraid the storm might be listening. "I don't know exactly. He never told me. Only that it was important, dangerous, and that he was going to hide it until he could get us away from him. Here, 2 days later, there was an accident. They said it was his fault, but I know it wasn't." Jack's mind turned over the possibilities. Out here, in deep space mining colonies, accidents often meant silencing someone who had learned. "Too much, and you think they killed him?" Jack said quietly. She nodded, the firelight catching the wet shine in her eyes. "I don't think I know. I think they believe he told me where it is. That is why they will never stop chasing me." Jack let the words sink in. He understood. Now, she wasn't just some poor widow with unpaid debts. She was holding a secret that powerful men wanted buried. "What's your name?" Jack asked. "Solari," she said softly. "And my daughter is Nira." Jack repeated the names in, his head anchoring them. Solari, Nira. 2 lives now tied to his. She looked at him again, her gaze steady. "I came to you for more than shelter. There is only one way I can be safe from them." Jack raised an eyebrow. "In what way is that?" "Galactic law," she said. "If a woman of my species marries a human citizen, she is under human protection. They cannot touch me without starting a legal war they cannot afford." Jack stared at her. "You're saying you came here to ask me to marry you?" Solari didn't flinch. "Yes." Jack let out a slow breath, leaning back. Of all the things he had expected to hear tonight, that was not one of them. "You don't know me," he said. "Why would you trust me with something like that?" Answer came without hesitation, "Because you looked at me like I was a person, not property. No one else has in a very long time." For a moment, the storm outside seemed to fade, replaced by the quiet weight of her words. Jack could see it. Now the exhaustion in her face, the way her shoulders slumped as if carrying more than she could bear, the spark in her eyes that refused to die. She wasn't begging for pity. She was offering him a choice. Before Jack could respond, a sound cut through the storm, the crunch of boots on wet gravel. Not one pair, but several. Heavy, measured. Solari's head snapped toward the door. Her grip on Nira tightening. "They found me," she whispered. Jack moved quickly, dousing the firelight just enough to dim the room. He stepped to the window, pulling back the curtain an inch. Dark figures moved outside, their shapes lit now and then by flashes of lightning. They were armed, their silhouettes sharp against the rain. "They're not here for a visit, Jack," said under his breath. Solari rose to her feet, clutching Nira close. Her voice was low, urgent. "If they get in, they will kill you. And take me." Jack turned to her, something stealing in his eyes. "Then I guess we better make sure they don't get in." A heavy knock pounded the door once, twice, then again. A deep voice called out, "Open up, human. You have something that belongs to us." Jack didn't move. He looked at Solari, then at the door, his mind racing through what little time they had. The knock came again, louder, followed by the sound of metal scraping, a weapon drawn. Solari's whisper was almost a plea. "Please, don't open it." Gave her a small nod. "Stay back. Keep Nira safe." The storm raged. The boots shifted outside, and in the fire's dying glow, Jack knew one thing. Tonight, the truth in Solari's eyes had become his truth too. The pounding on the door stopped, replaced by a slow scraping sound, like claws dragging over metal. Jack kept his back against the wall, his hand resting on the hunting knife at his belt. He glanced toward Solari. She stood in the shadow, by the fire, holding Nira close, her breathing quick and shallow, outside. The storm hissed against the cabin, rain striking in sheets, but beneath it came muffled voices speaking in a harsh alien tongue. Jack didn't understand the words, but he knew the tone. Threats, not requests. Then a deep, deliberate voice spoke in common, the trade language used across the colonies. "Human, you are sheltering a debtor. By rights of the Syndicate, she belongs to us. Open the door, and you may walk away unharmed." Solara's arms tightened around her daughter. Her whisper was filled with dread. "That is Krovek. He hunts for the Syndicate." Jack's eyes narrowed. "I take it he's not the forgiving type." Solari shook her head slowly. "He collects for them debt, property, lives. Once he marks someone, he never stops until he brings them back, dead or alive." Another loud knock made the cabin walls shake. "Last chance, human," Kravek's voice called. "Hand her over." Jack stepped to the door, keeping his voice steady. "She's under my protection. You want her? You'll have to come through me." A pause followed, the kind of pause that meant the man outside was deciding whether killing you was worth the trouble. Then came the sound of boots moving away from the door. Solari's eyes flickered with hope, but Jack didn't relax. "They're not leaving," he said. "They're just changing tactics." Moments later, a shadow passed by the window. Jack caught the glint of a weapon in the lightning flash. He pulled the curtain shut. "They'll try to break in," he said. "We need a plan." Solari swallowed hard. "You don't understand. They won't stop tonight. If you send them away, they'll just come back with more. The Syndicate owns half this colony, and the law." Jack looked at her sharply. "Psst. So what's the real story, Solari? Why are they willing to chase you through a storm instead of waiting for you to starve out there?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. "Because of the debt," she said, almost too softly to hear. Jack crossed his arms. "Debts don't send armed squads in the middle of the night. What do you owe them?" Solari's lips pressed into a thin line. "Everything," she whispered. "When my husband died, they claimed we owed for his training, his tools, the rent on our home, the medical bills from his injuries. They even charged me for the burial. By their books, I owe more than I could earn in 100 lifetimes." Jack's jaw tightened. "So they decided you were worth more as property." She nodded once. "And there's only one way I can erase the debt." Her eyes met his then, clear and unwavering. "If I marry a human citizen, the Syndicate cannot claim me. I would be under human law. They would have to let me go." Jack exhaled slowly. "That's why you came here." "Yes," she said. "But I am not asking for charity. I will work. I will cook, clean, help in your garden, whatever you need. I only ask that you give Nira and me a place where we are not hunted." The scraping outside grew louder. Now it was at the back of the cabin. Jack glanced toward the small storage room where the back door was bolted. "You're asking for more than a roof," he said quietly. "You're asking me to make enemies of men who don't forgive." "I am asking you to save 2 lives," she replied. Before Jack could answer, the sound of splintering wood came from the back. He grabbed his hunting rifle from above the fireplace, checked the chamber, and moved toward the storage room. "Here," he told Salor. The pounding on the back door grew frantic, and stopped suddenly. Silence. Jack held his breath, waiting. The next sound came from above, the groan of the cabin's roof under extra weight. "They're trying the roof," he muttered. "Say, Lar?" I clutched Nira tighter, stepping back into the corner. "If they take me, they will not stop with me," she said. "They will take her too. She is young enough to be sold." Jack's grip on the rifle tightened. Something hot and sharp twisted in his chest. Anger. He had seen cruelty before. But there was something about the thought of the little girl in Slurry's arms being dragged away that made his vision narrow. A thud came from the front porch, heavy boots landing. Jack moved fast, throwing the door open. Storm blew in, drenching him instantly, but he was already aiming. The man on the porch was massive. His skin dark green, his armor marked with the Syndicate sigil. Behind him, 2 more stood in, the rain weapons ready. Kravik's wide mouth curled into a grin. "You're a brave human," Kravik said over the storm. "But bravery doesn't stop dead." Jack's voice was like stone. "She's under my protection. Turn around and leave." Kravik's grin widened. "Then the dead is yours now." Lightning flashed, and for a heartbeat the world was white. When the darkness returned, the Syndicate men were still there, unmoving, like predators deciding when to strike. Jack didn't lower his weapon. "You'll have to kill me first." The storm roared, the rain stung his face, and Kravik finally gave a slow nod. "Not tonight, human, but soon." They stepped back into the darkness, their shapes swallowed by the storm. Jack stayed at the door until even the sound of their boots was gone. Then he closed it, locking it twice. Solari was still in the corner, Nira held tight against her chest. Her eyes searched his face. "They will come again." Jack nodded slowly. "I know." And in that moment, he understood something. Helping her wasn't just about one night's shelter anymore. It was about standing between her and the kind of men who believed they owned her life. And once you take that stand, there's no going back. The night felt heavier after they left, as if the storm itself carried their promise of return. Jack set his rifle back against the wall, though he kept it within reach. Solari hadn't moved from the corner, her daughter still wrapped in the blanket, her silver eyes fixed on the door as if expecting it to burst open any second. "They'll wait," Jack said quietly. "Men like that always do. They'll come back when they think I've let my guard down." Solari nodded, her voice low. "They don't forgive and they don't forget." Jack crouched near the fire, feeding it fresh wood until the flames warmed the room again. "Then we use the time we have. You need food, sleep, and a plan." She hesitated, then stepped forward. "You're risking your life for someone you met tonight?" "Why?" Jack looked up at her, his face unreadable. "'Cause if I don't, no one else will. Out here. There aren't many lines left between people and the things that hunt them. Sometimes you have to draw one yourself." Laurie didn't speak. But the smallest flicker of relief crossed her face. She eased into the chair by the fire, holding Nira in her lap. The child stirred, blinking up at the orange glow, before falling back into a light sleep. For a few minutes, the storm's roar was the only sound between them. Then, from somewhere outside, came a faint metallic clink. Jack froze, listening. It came again, not from the door this time, but from the far side of the cabin. "They're still here," he murmured. Solari's grip on Nira tightened. "They'll try to scare you or break you. If you push back too hard, they'll burn this place down." Jack's eyes hardened. "Then we make sure they understand something first." He moved to the side window, sliding it open just enough to see. In the flashes of lightning, he spotted a figure near the water tank, pouring something at its base. It didn't take long to guess flammable fuel. Another stood nearby, keeping watch. Jack slipped out the back door, moving low and silent. The storm masked his steps as he circled behind them. Closer he got, The clearer he could hear their voices, harsh, guttural words laced with amusement. They thought this was a game. When Jack was close enough, he stepped out from the shadows. His rifle aimed steady. "Drop it," he said over the wind. Both men spun around, startled. One froze, the other reached for his weapon, but Jack fired a single shot into the mud at his feet. The splash of dirt and water made them both flinch. "Back. Tell Krovik this," Jack said, his voice cutting through the rain. "Come near this place again. I'll stop aiming at the ground." The one with the fuel sneered, but the other pulled at his arm. They backed away slowly, disappearing into the sheets of rain. Jack waited until they were gone before he went back inside. Solari was standing just inside the door, eyes wide. "They were trying to burn us?" "Yes," Jack said simply, setting the rifle down. "They wanted to send a message. I just sent one back." She stepped closer, her voice almost a whisper. "That was dangerous. If you hurt them, they'll come with more." Jack met her gaze. "If I let them think they can walk over me, they'll never stop." Solari looked at him for a long moment, then gave the smallest nod. "You are different from the humans I've met before." Jack didn't answer. He poured her another cup of tea, and for the first time since she arrived, she drank without trembling. But their moment of quiet didn't last. As the storm began to ease, a sharp whistle echoed from the distance. Not a sound of retreat, but of calling more. Jack stepped to the door and looked out. Shapes moved in the darkness beyond the tree line, too many to count. "They're calling in the rest," he said. "This isn't over." Valera's face went pale. "They'll surround us. Once the storm clears, they'll have the advantage." Jack's mind raced. Fighting them all here would be suicide, but moving Solari and Nira now, in the wet and the dark, would be just as dangerous. They needed time and a way to buy it. He looked back at her, said, "Marrying a human puts you under our law. How fast can that be done?" Her eyes widened. At the question, "If we find a registrar, it can be done in minutes, but the nearest one is in the Central District." Jack's jaw tightened. "Which means we'd have to get through the Syndicate's territory." Celery glanced toward her. "Sleeping daughter," then back at him. "If we wait, they will come. If we leave, we may not make it." Jack nodded slowly. "Then we picked a risk we can live with." He moved to check his supplies, ammo, water, a small pack of food. Solari watched him, her fingers brushing over Nira's hair. "If we do this," she said softly, "you will have their wrath for the rest of your life." Jack paused, looking at her. "Maybe, or maybe they'll learn some debts aren't worth collecting." Outside, the storm faded to a drizzle. But in the distance, the sound of engines rumbled, low and growing. The Syndicate wasn't retreating, they were moving in. Jack closed the door and locked it, his decision already made. "Get ready, we move before dawn." Solari's voice was quiet, but steady. "Then I will be your wife before the sun rises." And with those words, the first threat had turned into something far bigger, a choice that would change all their lives. The first gray light of dawn was creeping across the horizon when Jack finished packing. The storm had passed, but the wet ground outside glistened with the fresh tracks of Syndicate boots. He knew they were still out there, waiting. Solari sat at the small table, her daughter Nira, wrapped snugly in a thicker blanket Jack had found. She was silent, watching him move with quick, purposeful motions, checking the rifle, tying down the pack, loading extra shells into his belt. Finally, she spoke. "You are really going to take us to the Central District?" "Yes," Jack said without looking up. "If what you said is true, the only way to make them back off is to put you under human law. That means getting you married before they get to us." Solari's voice was soft, but steady. "And you are agreeing to be that husband?" Jack stopped, looking at her. "I'm agreeing to keep you alive. The rest, we figure out as we go." Solari's silver eyes searched his face for a moment before she looked down at Nira. "I have nothing to offer you. No money, no land, no family to help you. I cannot repay this in any way that would make sense to humans." Jack strapped the pack to his shoulder. "Then stop thinking of it as a trade. Think of it as survival. Salari shook her head. No, you need to understand where I come from. Marriage is not just a law, it is a bond. If I do this, I am yours until I die, and my daughter will be yours too. Her words hung in the air. Jack glanced at Nira, the little girl's small face calm in sleep, unaware of the storm waiting beyond the door. If that's the bargain, he said finally, then I accept it. Salari's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected him to say it so plainly. Why? She asked. You could give me to them, keep yourself safe, and no one would judge you. Jack's voice was low, but certain. Because I'm not the kind of man who gives away people to be owned. For a moment, neither spoke. The distant hum of engines reminded them they didn't have long. Jack moved to the window, peering out between the curtains. He could see movement at the far edge of the tree line, shadows shifting, watching there. Still here, he said. They'll follow us the moment we leave. That means we'll need to take the back route through the canyons. Salari frowned. That will take longer, yes, Jack replied. But it will keep us hidden until we're close to the district. Once we're inside human territory, the Syndicate can't touch you without breaking the treaty. Salari pulled Nira closer and rose from the chair. Then we should go before they decide to come in after us. Jack nodded, stepping to the door. But before he opened it, Salari's hand touched his arm. One thing first. Jack turned to her. She held his gaze, her voice quiet but clear. You should know. If we succeed, they will never stop hating you. They may not be able to take me, but they will come for you in other ways. This will not end until one of us is gone. Jack's expression didn't change. I guess we'd make sure that's not me. Her lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile, but something close. You talk like a fighter. I've had practice, he said simply. She gave a small nod, then adjusted the blanket around Nira. Then let's make this bargain official when we get there. Jack opened the door slowly, scanning the clearing. The air was cold and sharp. The smell of wet earth, heavy. No Syndicate men stood in sight, but he could feel their presence. He motioned for Salari to follow, and together they stepped into the open. They moved quickly toward the tree line, Jack leading with his rifle ready, Salari close behind. The soft squelch of wet mud marked their steps. Every few seconds, Jack glanced back, checking the path. It didn't take long before the sound of engines grew louder behind them. Jack grabbed Salari's arm, pulling her into the cover of the trees. They've seen us, he said. Salari's voice was tight. Ken! We outrun them? Jack's eyes swept the narrow path ahead. We don't outrun. We make them think they've lost us. He led her down a slope into the canyon's shadow, the walls rising high on both sides. Here the sound of the engines faded, replaced by the steady drip of water from above. Jack's boots splashed through shallow streams as they wound deeper, into the twisting path. After nearly an hour of weaving through rock and water, they paused in a sheltered bend. Salari sat on a flat stone, holding Nira close while Jack scanned the way ahead. This path will take us behind the district, he said. Once we're there, it's just a short walk to the registrar's office. Laurie looked down at Nira, brushing a strand of damp hair from her forehead. If we make it, she said softly. Jack crouched in front of her. We will. And when we do, no one will have the right to take you from me. Salari met his gaze, and for the first time since she'd knocked on his door, her eyes held something stronger than fear or trust. But their moment was cut short. From somewhere above the canyon, the sharp echo of voices carried down. Syndicate. Scouts. They had found their trail. Jack's hand went to his rifle. Time to move, he said. The bargain will mean nothing if they catch us before the papers are signed. Salari rose without hesitation. Then lead the way, husband-to-be. And with that, they plunged deeper into the winding canyon. The promise of marriage now more than protection. It had become a lifeline neither could afford to lose. The canyon walls grew narrower as Jack led Salari and Nira deeper into the winding path. Ow! Water dripped from above, and their footsteps splashed softly through the shallow stream that snaked along the ground. Jack kept his rifle ready, his eyes Scanning the shadows, listening for anything that didn't belong, Solari stayed close. One arm wrapped around Nira, the other keeping her balance on the slick stones. Her breath came in short bursts, but she didn't complain. She knew the Syndicate wouldn't rest. Every second they moved forward meant another second of life. For a brief moment, Jack thought they might have shaken their pursuers. The voices from earlier had faded, and the only sound was the gentle rush of water. Then, faintly, he heard it, the low hum of an engine, somewhere above the canyon. He stopped, raising his hand. Solari froze behind him, her eyes scanning the cliffs. "They're here," she whispered. Jack's gaze swept upward. The Syndicate was using aerial scouts now, small hovercraft that could move faster than anyone on foot. If they spotted them, the hunt would end quickly. "We need cover," Jack said. He led her toward a dark opening in the canyon wall, a narrow cave barely wide enough for the two of them. Inside, the air was cool and damp. Jack motioned for her to stay silent as the sound of the engine grew louder. Moments later, shadow passed over the canyon, and the craft's searchlights swept across the rocks. They lingered for a moment near the cave mouth, so close that Solari's grip on Nira tightened until her knuckles turned white.
HFY.
Jack's finger hovered near the rifle trigger, but he stayed still, knowing a single shot would bring the rest of the Syndicate down on them. The light passed and the hum faded again, but Jack knew it was only a matter of time before they returned. "They'll block the exits," he said quietly. "We need to move fast before they trap us in here." They pushed on, the canyon twisting and sloping upward until it opened into a wider valley. The air here felt different, cleaner, sharper. Jack could see the faint outlines of buildings in the distance. The edge of the central district was close. Solari's steps quickened at the sight, but Jack's eyes caught something else: movement along the ridges. Small glints of metal, catching the sunlight. Syndicate marksmen. "They're ahead of us," Jack muttered. "They've set an ambush." Solari's heart pounded. "Then what do we do?" "We don't give them the fight they want. We go around, through the lower pass." But before they could turn, the sound of heavy boots echoed from behind. The Syndicate was closing in from both sides. Solari's voice was tense. "They've surrounded us." Jack's mind raced. They couldn't outfight that many, not with Nira to protect. Then he spotted it, an old service tunnel built into the canyon wall, half hidden by vines. If it's still connected to the district's old mining sector, it could get them out unseen. "This way," Jack said. Moving quickly, they slipped into the tunnel just as the first Syndicate scouts appeared in the valley. The air inside was stale, filled with the scent of rust and old stone. Jack's boots echoed on the metal grating beneath them as they followed the narrow path. For a while, it seemed they had escaped again, until a voice called out ahead. "Going somewhere, human?" Krovik stepped from the shadows, his massive left frame blocking the tunnel. Two Syndicate guards flanked him, weapons drawn. Solari stiffened, pulling Nira close. Jack raised his rifle, but Kravik's grin only widened. "You've run well," Kravik said, "but it ends here. Hand over the woman and the child, and I'll let you keep your life." Jack's voice was cold. "Not happening." Kravik's smile faded. "Then you die here, and they come with me anyway." The guard stepped forward, but Jack didn't move. His finger tightened on the trigger. "If you want them, you'll have to step over my body." Kravik tilted his head, as if considering it. Then he lunged. The tunnel exploded into chaos. Doc's rifle roared, the shot echoing like thunder. One guard fell, but the other rushed him, swinging a heavy blade. Jack blocked with the rifle. The clash ringing through the metal walls. Solari backed against the wall, shielding Nira with her body. Then her hand slipped into the folds of her cloak, pulling free a curved blade of her own. With a swift motion, she slashed at the second guard, forcing him back. Jack slammed the butt of his rifle into the guard's helmet, sending him crashing to the floor. Kravik swung a massive fist, catching Jack across the jaw and sending him stumbling. But Jack recovered fast, ramming his shoulder into Kravik's chest and driving him into the wall. The tunnel shook with the force, dust raining from the ceiling. Kravik snarled, grabbing Jack's throat. Jack's vision blurred, but he swung the rifle up, pressing the barrel under Krovic's jaw. "Let go," Jack growled. Krovic's eyes burned with fury, but after a long moment he released his grip and stepped back. "This isn't over, human," he spat. "The law won't protect you forever." Jack kept the rifle aimed until Krovic backed away into the shadows, dragging his wounded men with him. Solari rushed to Jack's side. "You're hurt." Jack wiped the blood from his lip. "I've had worse. We keep moving." They hurried through the rest of the tunnel, emerging into the old mining sector. The buildings of the central district were now just a few streets away. Solari looked toward them, her face pale but determined. "Once we get inside," she said, "we go straight to the registrar." "No more delays," Jack nodded. "We end this before they can strike again." But deep inside, he knew the Syndicate wouldn't see this as the end. Marriage would give Solari and Nira protection, but it would also put a permanent target on his back, and Jack had already decided that was a price he was willing to pay. The old mining sector was quiet, its rusting structures leaning like tired giants against the pale morning sky. Jack kept Solari and Nira close as they moved through the empty streets. His rifle stayed in his hands, though the silence made him uneasy. The Syndicate might have pulled back, but he knew they would be watching. The central district's boundary wall rose ahead, tall and made of thick alloy plates. At the base, 2 human guards stood at the gate, scanning the area. Jack walked straight toward them. One of the guards raised a hand. "Hold it! What's your business here?" Jack spoke clearly. "Registrar's office. Marriage filing. It's urgent."
Ow.
The guard's eyes shifted to Solari, then to Nira in her arms. "Alien spouse request?"
Yes,
Jack said. The guard exchanged a look with his partner, then opened the gate. "You've got 20 minutes before the office closes for the morning cycle. If you've got Syndicate trouble, better settle it fast. They've been sniffing around the border." Jack gave a short nod and led Solari inside. The streets here were cleaner, the buildings newer. Human citizens moved about with calm faces, unaware of the danger following them. Solari's eyes darted around, taking in the sight of a place where law actually meant something. Nira stirred in her arms, her small hand curling into the blanket. Jack guided them to a tall building with a polished steel door. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of paper and old ink. Behind a counter, a middle-aged human clerk looked up. "Marriage registration?" she asked. "Yes," Jack said. "Immediate processing." The clerk pulled out a set of forms, her eyes moving between them. "You're the human citizen?" "I am," Jack replied. "And she is the alien spouse." Solari stepped forward, her chin high despite the exhaustion in her body. "I am." The clerk studied her for a moment, then nodded and began the process. "Both of you will need to sign. I'll also need your thumbprints. The union will be recognized under human law immediately." Jack took the pen first, signing with steady strokes. Solari followed, her handwriting flowing in elegant, unfamiliar script. Then they pressed their thumbs onto the scanner, one after the other. The clerk confirmed the entries, then looked up. "Congratulations. You are now legally married under the charter of the Human Colonial Authority. Your spouse and her child are citizens under your protection." Solari's breath caught in her throat. She turned to Jack, her voice soft. "It is done?" "It's done," Jack said. For a brief moment, she closed her eyes, as if the weight she had been carrying finally shifted. But the moment was broken by a sharp voice from the doorway. "Not quite," Krovic said. He stood in the entrance, flanked by 2 Syndicate enforcers. The clerk froze, her hand hovering over the desk alarm. Kravic's gaze locked on Solari. "You think a piece of human paper changes anything?" he growled. "She owes a debt, human, and I collect debts." Jack stepped between them. "That paper says she's my wife. She's under human law now. Touch her, and you're declaring war on the colonial authority." Kravic's grin was cold. "Maybe I'm ready for war." The clerk's voice cut in, firm despite her fear. "Syndicate operatives have no jurisdiction in this district. You will leave, or security will escort you out." Kravic's eyes burned into Jack's, then shifted to Solari. "This isn't over," he said slowly. "You can hide behind your human husband for now, but the moment he slips, I'll be there." Jack didn't look away. You'll have to get through me first." The standoff lasted several long seconds before Krovik finally turned and walked out, his men following. The clerk exhaled and reached for her papers again. "Should get home and stay out of trouble." Outside, the air felt sharper. Solari walked beside Jack in silence, Nira cradled against her chest. When they were far enough from the registrar's building, she stopped. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly. Jack looked at her. "Yes, I did." Her voice trembled. "You've put yourself in danger for us. The Syndicate won't forget." "I don't want them to forget," Jack said. "I want them to remember exactly who stood in their way." Solari's silver eyes met his, and for the first time, there was no barrier between them. No fear, no doubt. Only the understanding that their lives were now bound together. She stepped closer, her free hand resting lightly on his arm. "Then you are not just my protector, Jack. You are my husband." Jack glanced at Nira, who was finally sleeping peacefully. "And I guess that makes me a father too." Solari's lips curved into a faint smile. "If you wish it." "I do," Jack said. They began walking again, the sun rising higher behind them. The danger wasn't gone. Jack knew Krovik's words were a promise, not a threat. The Syndicate would wait for its chance. But now, Celery and Nira were under his name, his home, and his protection. And he had no intention of letting anyone take them away. That morning, in the quiet streets of the Central District, Jack understood something. He hadn't just agreed to a marriage to protect a stranger. He had chosen a fight worth standing for, a family worth keeping. The human husband had been made that day, and no Syndicate in the galaxy would ever change it.